My name is Magaret Ekerendu, and I am a data annotator. I have worked in data annotation for over 2 years now, and it's been an amazing experience. But for freelancers in data annotation, they can't say the same because I've learned that there is a bit of a collaboration issue when it comes to working from different locations on a pilot project. I think that the best collaborations that I've seen so far in data annotation is only in companies that actually prioritize collaboration and ethical culture, such as mine. And so today I'm going to be talking to us about InnerSource and how we can leverage InnerSource for better collaboration in data annotation. So why does data annotation need better collaboration? Annotation directly impacts the performance of an AI model because annotation is basically teaching the model how to respond to a user's query. For example, if I'm trying to train a large language model, I'll teach the model how to answer questions and do various tasks that the user is going to ask the model to. So if my labels are inconsistent or wrong, it's going to greatly affect the of that particular model. And this is why collaboration is very important in data annotation. And the problem is that for most companies, especially companies working on pilot projects, when I say pilot projects, I mean short-term projects. Sometimes they want to work on this project so they can have access to more projects. If you're working for a particular client, you're not building a model directly for your company, you're building models for other companies. You have to work on a short-term project so that you can have access to long-term projects. And so because these companies feel that these projects are just short-term, they don't really invest in collaboration. So the guidelines that most annotators work with are just PDFs. So for example, you're being called to work on this pilot project and they just share guidelines on your email. No communication, no training. You're just meant to read that guideline and then train that model, which is quite disastrous if you ask me. So that's why I feel like instead of having PDFs, we can actually have live repositories. And that is what my presentation is all about. So there was this edge case where I was working as a freelance annotator for a company and we're meant to segment images. So in the middle of segmentation, I got to find out that one of the labels were wrong. Now, I don't have direct access to the training coordinator or the training manager in charge of that project. So I just had to, thankfully, I was in contact with some of the data annotators on that particular project, and I had to reach out to them directly and we talked about it. It was quite confusing, but we had to just send a mail and we didn't get any response. So we just had to move on because in annotation, you have a limited time to produce a large data set. So we just had to work on it and then get feedback the next day. So imagine having to work on what you've already worked on the previous day just because there was bad communication. I think that is going to slow down the entire process. So what's InnerSource? What does InnerSource mean? Why is InnerSource important? And why have we been talking about InnerSource? InnerSource is simply open source practices, but inside your organization. It's not just a tool that you work with, it's actually a way of working. And think about open source. There are different people in different parts of the world that come together to collaborate on a particular project. And I always thought that open source or InnerSource was just for developers, right? Software developers. I never believed that data annotators can actually make use of open source tools, can actually make use of InnerSource principles, until I met up with Riti Kega, the community manager for open source, and she explained to me that everybody can contribute to open source. And then I went on GitHub and I saw a lot of contributions from a lot of people, and I was surprised. And I said, if we can actually make use of GitHub this way, then I believe that every company, whether you're working with freelance annotators, you should actually have access to this, because collaboration is slowly killing, lack of collaboration is slowly killing data annotation. So InnerSource is transforming workflows, right? this is where annotation is really transformed, because instead of waiting weeks for your manager to actually update the guideline, as in my case, or getting answers to direct queries, annotators can actually suggest improvements on that workflow. So your guidelines are not just PDFs, but they are living in GitHub, and then the blockers in that project become shared contribution. So everybody's contributing to that particular edge case or blocker that was shared on GitHub. And then you're not just having data annotators on the platform. If you're working for an external client, they can actually be part of that. They can actually be part of the contribution, the training managers, training coordinators, engineers on that project. Every single person is actually making contribution to the success of that project. And so you have one shared vision across all workflows. And then another beauty of InnerSource in data annotation is that, for example, let's say we are working on an audio project and we are meant to, let's say we are meant to segment, or we are meant to transcribe. Let's say we are working on a transcription project and you're done with that project. Let's say that project is to span for 3 months, and then you're done with that particular project, and your client is impressed with your work. Your client says, oh, I think I need to work on another part of this audio project, which is context, trying to pull out context from the user's query to help the model understand what the user is asking for. So instead of having to create a whole new guideline for that particular project, you can actually lift the foundation of your previous project, your previous audio project, and then apply it to this new project. So you're not starting from the very beginning, which is another beauty of InnerSource in data annotation that we don't talk about often. So your guidelines are already in your GitHub repository. So all you need to do is to lift up the parts that are important to you and then create a new repository for that project. So what tools can we use as data annotators? Making use of open source tools to apply InnerSource in our organization or company. We can actually make use of GitHub and GitLab. So GitHub and GitLab is going to be for your guidelines. So you don't need to be a developer to make use of GitHub and GitLab. You can just comment, you can just create issues and then share your ideas. And then for CVAT and Label Studio, these are annotation tools that I believe annotators should be conversant with. But if you're not, CVAT, for example, if you're working on segmentation images, you can actually make use of CVAT, right? I've actually made use of CVAT before, and it's quite seamless and easy. So the beauty of CVAT is that you can actually link it to your GitHub repository, right? So when you have a confusing image that you're annotating on CVAT, you can just copy that image, create an issue, and then go ahead to describe what the issue is. So when we annotate data, you're not just drawing different boxes on different images. You're actually building training data, and that is why it's important that you must get your labels correct. So we need a way to review, discuss, and version control our annotations, just like developers manage code. And I believe that GitHub is the best way to go. And that's where InnerSource also comes in to build collaboration. So how do we link our CVAT to GitHub? So the first thing you're going to do is to connect your annotation tool to a GitHub repo. I'm going to show you how to create a GitHub repo if you don't know how to do that. And then you will add GitHub as a remote storage. And once you link this, your images and annotation files are automatically stored in that repository and versioned just like source code. So it's quite easy. So every annotator, every reviewer manager works from the same shared data set, and every update, export, or correction is tracked in your Git history. So like I said earlier, when you find an edge case or a confusing image, you just export that image directly from CVAT or Label Studio. You get to the connected GitHub repo where your guidelines and data set lives, and then you create a GitHub issue with a short message such as, oh, the image looks unclear. Should this be labeled as a dog or a wolf? It's quite easy see, and then your issue is immediately notified to your training manager, your reviewer, anybody that is in charge, and then you can discuss it right there and come to a conclusion. So what are the benefits of InnerSource? With InnerSource, we see fewer errors. With InnerSource, we see reduced bias because annotation has become transparent. So the benefits are immediate. So instead of waiting for us to get updates, updates are seen immediately. And then you just continue with work. And then everybody learns from everyone's blocker. So you're not just speaking to a particular person or a particular manager to get answers to your question. The answers are live for other annotators to actually see and make use of in their future annotations. So there was one project I worked on and someone noticed an error, and so we flagged it and we discussed the error together and we came to a conclusion, right? And this is already stored in your Git history. So anytime anyone, whether the person is newly onboarded on that project, comes across an edge case, the person can just head over to GitHub, go through the guidelines and find the updates there and implement it. So yes, there are real world examples of people that are making use of InnerSource. So InnerSource is not just new. We see IBM uses it to drive innovation. Walmart uses it to move faster with software, and closer to annotation, I've seen companies that bring InnerSource in data teams. And most times they don't know that they are actually applying InnerSource principles. And I've tried to shed more light on this with the projects that I've worked on recently. And every guideline is in a shared repository where annotators and engineers can actually collaborate. So I have a quick mini tutorial on how you can create a GitHub repository. So all you have to do is to create a private GitHub repository for that particular project because you're working internally, right? It's not supposed to be public for everybody to see. I believe that your guidelines should be private to you and your company. So you can name it whatever you want to name it. You can name it annotation guidelines, annotation documents, or whatever you want to name it. And then you can give a quick description of what that project is about before you add your README file to it. And then you can also choose to make it public or private. And then, yeah, that's it. You've created your repository. So, sorry. So if you're having issues with creating, sorry, I think. Okay, so when you create your GitHub repository, you can just, you see where you see code, issues, pull requests, you can just add an issue. If you're having an issue during your annotation process, you can just create an issue there, new issue, write the title of the issue, or wrong annotation, wrong label, or helmet is labeled as head here. What should I do about it? So it's just an easy process. You create your issue and then it's live for everybody to see and contribute to it. So someone might ask, I'm in an organization, I don't know what InnerSource is all about. I'm more of annotation. I'm new to InnerSource. I'm new to open source. What do I have to do? So you don't have to do too much, right? You can just start small. Like I said earlier, you can start with a pilot project. You can start with a small pilot project, on board all the people in charge of the project, or the people that are going to contribute to that project, just onboard them to the project. And then you pick one guideline, define what success looks like for you. Do you want fewer annotation errors? Do you want faster blocker resolution? Anything that you want, you can just define it within your team. And then you encourage your annotators to give open feedback. Because most times, some annotators are always scared to give feedback. They are unsure of what they are supposed to do, and they don't want to feel like they don't know what to do. So you have to create that safe environment for them. And then you just have to encourage them. Oh, it's just like a WhatsApp chat, no biggie. You don't have to know all the source codes. You don't have to know HTML5 or CSS or Python. It's just very easy to use. And then you have to build cross-functional support between engineers, annotators, and project managers. So the key takeaways, InnerSource builds on what exists. Patterns guide adoptions, and annotation plus transparency equals ethical AI. You're not starting over, you're building on what you already do, but InnerSource just brings more openness within your organization or your company. And when applied to annotation, InnerSource results in better AI and more ethical processes. Thank you very much.